"We don't want to go back." A scream burst out, cracking through the cramped hall of Fort Dean's prison camp in Massachusetts. The German female prisoners shot to their feet, eyes red with tears, hands trembling, yet their voices rang out like an oath. The American officers were stunned into silence. They had just read the order from Washington: "You are free. Within 2 weeks, you will be sent back to Germany." It should have been good news, the moment everyone had been waiting for. But no, these women, once clad in the enemy's uniform, now begged to stay in America, the very land that had imprisoned them. Why? What could drive a prisoner to reject freedom and cling to chains? The answer began half a year earlier, in a harsh winter November 1944. As the war in Europe neared its end, a group of nearly 60 German women were brought to America. They were not frontline soldiers, but members of the German Women's Auxiliary Corps, radio operators, nurses, secretaries, logistics staff. They had been captured in the final months as German forces fled from France and Belgium. Now they were herded onto trucks and driven to a makeshift prison camp near Fort Dean's. When the truck doors opened, Captain Margaret Sullivan, one of the few American female officers assigned to manage prisoners, stood watching. She later recalled, "They stepped down with icy eyes, proud yet uneasy, still dressed in their faded gray uniforms, backs straight, shoulders squared, marching in order." They were prisoners, but stood taller than many American soldiers in the barracks. Among them, one girl stood out, Ingrid Brenner, 23, from Hamburg. She had worked as a radio specialist, joining the Women's Corps in 1943 with the belief she was defending her homeland. Land across the ocean, Ingrid clutched a small leather notebook, her only surviving diary after being captured. It was the last fragment connecting her to her former life. Beside Ingrid was Anna Weber, with pale blonde hair, a frail frame, and weary blue eyes. Anna had been a field nurse, chasing after regiments during the war's most brutal days. Now, every hoarse cough rattling in her throat was a reminder. War had taken not only homes, but health and youth itself. From the first day in camp, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The women spoke little, barely acknowledging the guards. They ate in silence, exchanging only a few short words in German. Their faces wore cold masks as if to remind themselves, "We are prisoners, we are still soldiers, we must not bow." Captain Sullivan noticed, even in captivity, they maintained military bearing. Walking in the yard, they stayed in formation, no one slouching or relaxing. Even at mealtime, their backs remained straight, eyes fixed on their trays as if on a march. In her diary, Ingrid wrote her first lines at Fort Dean's. First day in the American camp. "I don't know what the future holds. We are prisoners, yet I have never felt so severed from my homeland. Strange faces, voices I cannot understand, and a bitter cold. I cling to this diary as if it were the last piece of my soul." To those women, Fort Dean's was at first nothing more than a cold, distant holding place, thousands of miles from home. No one could have imagined that this very place would change their lives forever. Time at Fort Dean's passed as slowly as dripping water. The German female prisoners kept their distance, silent at meals, eyes lowered whenever they walked past the guards. No one wanted to appear weak before the enemy. Yet, a small event cracked that wall of coldness. One morning in early December 1944, Private James Morrison, a 21-year-old farm boy from Iowa, noticed Anna Weber trembling, her coughing fits leaving her breathless. He knew she lacked a warm enough blanket. Remembering his grandmother's folk remedy, that a cup of hot herbal tea could ease a cough, Morrison quietly fetched an extra army blanket and smuggled it to the cell. He spoke no German, only draped the blanket over Anna's shoulders and handed her the steaming cup. Anna looked at him, wide-eyed in shock. Since childhood, she had been told American soldiers were cruel and merciless. But this young man, with his boyish face, was offering her a cup of tea with a gaze so sincere it was almost unbelievable. She whispered a single word, "Danke," thank you. It was a small moment, yet it sparked like fire in a frozen room. Word spread quickly among the prisoners. They began to wonder, who are the Americans really? Perhaps they are not monsters, as we were told. Soon another guard, Sergeant Robert Chen, the son of Chinese immigrants, had an idea: to teach the prisoners a few basic English words. Chen knew what it felt like to be seen as different, so he patiently drew letters in the dirt, pointing to objects around them. At first, the women shook their heads. Then Ingrid Brenner, who had studied a bit of English in high school, stepped forward and tried. The words table, water, friend came out haltingly, but clearly. From then on, small English lessons took place each afternoon between guards and prisoners. For the first time, hesitant laughter echoed in the camp yard. The invisible walls began to crack. In her diary, Ingrid wrote, "These Americans are not like what we were told. In their eyes, I see no hatred, only curiosity. I don't know how I should feel, but for the first time, I feel my heart grow lighter." The words table, water, friend came out haltingly, but clearly. From then on, small English lessons took place each afternoon between guards and prisoners. For the first time, hesitant laughter echoed in the camp yard. The invisible walls began to crack. In her diary, Ingrid wrote, "These Americans are not like what we were told. In their eyes, I see no hatred, only curiosity. I don't know how I should feel, but for the first time, I feel my heart grow lighter." December 1944. A harsh winter swept through Massachusetts. The sky was heavy and gray. The wind howled through window frames, and the prison camp felt gloomier than ever. Captain Margaret Sullivan was troubled. Christmas was approaching, and she knew for these young women, far from home, far from family, the holiday season would only deepen their sorrow. If nothing was done, their spirits would sink even lower. So Sullivan made a decision. She allowed them to craft decorations from whatever scraps they had, newspaper, rags, leftover wood. At first, the prisoners hesitated, but soon, like a faint glimmer of light, they began cutting stars from paper, tying rags into simple wreaths. On the afternoon of December 24th, Ingrid approached Sullivan. In her broken English, she asked, "Captain, may we sing German, and also American song?" Sullivan was surprised, but nodded. December 1944. A harsh winter swept through Massachusetts. The sky was heavy and gray. The wind howled through window frames and the prison. That evening, in the small hall, under the dim glow of yellow lamps, 60 German women stood in rows, faces solemn. The first notes rose, "O Tannenbaum," the familiar German Christmas carol. Their voices rang clear, strong, blended like a choir. Then something unexpected happened. They began to sing Silent Night in English. The words were clumsy, the rhythm uneven at times, but the room fell utterly silent. Private Morrison, standing guard in the corner, wept. In a letter to his mother in Iowa, he wrote, "Mom, tonight I heard German girls sing Silent Night in English. I forgot they were once the enemy. They were just like Sarah and my sister's friends in Cedar Rapids, young, lost, and homesick." That Christmas Eve, the line between prisoner and guard seemed to vanish. They no longer looked at each other with hatred, but with the eyes of exiles, longing for the same simple thing, peace. After that night, the camp's atmosphere changed completely. The women began volunteering in the kitchen, doing laundry, mending clothes. Those with medical training helped in the infirmary. Ingrid gradually became the interpreter between both sides, bridging their words. In her diary, she wrote, "Last night we sang. I had never trembled so much, singing in the enemy's tongue. But when I saw their eyes, I realized they were no longer the enemy. Perhaps this is the truth." Early 1945, a harsh winter blanketed Fort Deans in white. Life in the camp seemed to have softened. German prisoners and American soldiers no longer looked at each other with hatred, but began exchanging small talks, hesitant laughter. But then, one February day, their world turned upside down. In the camp's small reading room, a few American newspapers arrived. On the front pages were blurry but horrifying black and white photos, piles of corpses, emaciated bodies, lifeless eyes behind barbed wire. It was Bergen-Belsen. It was Dachau, the concentration camps the Allies had just liberated. Ingrid Brenner held the newspaper, her hands shaking so badly she nearly tore the page. Tears welled up as she read the lines. Tens of thousands dead from starvation, disease, and systematic torture. She mumbled in German, "Das kann nicht wahr sein. This can't be. This can't be my Germany." Just then, Anna Weber walked in, seeing Ingrid slumped over. Anna looked at the paper, then whispered, "Ingrid, is this real? Did we really do these things?" The question silenced the room. The other female prisoners gathered around, eyes wide, filled with confusion and pain. They weren't Nazi fanatics. They were just young women who believed they were serving their country. And now that entire belief crumbled like a sandcastle. Ingrid wrote in her diary that night, "I thought I knew my homeland. I thought I was protecting my family, my home. But today I realized perhaps we were serving a darkness greater than anything I imagined. I no longer know who I am." Captain Sullivan stood watching from a distance. She had seen many German male prisoners collapse upon learning about the camps, but never had she witnessed such raw pain. Not anger, not defiance, but utter heartbreak. For many nights, the lights in the prisoners' rooms stayed on, with muffled sobs echoing. The girls whispered to each other, trying to comprehend the incomprehensible. How could we have been part of a country that did this? To them, the war wasn't just a military defeat, it was a moral collapse. March came, spring arrived, and the ice around Fort Deans began to melt. Along with it, something new also began to blossom within the camp. After the shock of the death camps, the female prisoners seemed to transform. They began participating more in daily life, not out of obligation, but from an inner need, a desire to prove they could do something right. They volunteered to help the kitchen prepare meals. They washed and mended torn uniforms for the guards. Those with medical training assisted in the infirmary. Anna Weber stood out in particular. Under the guidance of Dr. Robert Hayes, she gradually revealed her natural gift for nursing, skilled hands, patience, and eyes that radiated compassion. At first, Hayes had been skeptical about working with a German prisoner, but after just a few weeks, he had to admit, she has a true gift. Those are hands made to heal, not to serve war. Meanwhile, Ingrid Brenner became the language bridge. Thanks to her rapidly improving English under Sergeant Chen's classes, She translated for both sides, helping prisoners and guards understand each other better. Ingrid even taught a few German words to the American soldiers, adding a sense of warmth to the atmosphere. By April 1945, Fort Deans was no longer a cold prison. It felt more like a small community where people lived and shared together. It was during this time that the Henderson family appeared. They were a local family from a church group that often visited the camp to comfort the prisoners. Mrs. Henderson, a high school teacher, took special notice of Ingrid. During one conversation, she told her, "Ingrid, you are not guilty for what you didn't know. What matters now is what you choose to do with what you know." That sentence etched itself into Ingrid's mind. That night she wrote, "I never thought an American, my enemy, could look at me with the eyes of a teacher, a mother. I'm beginning to understand. Maybe homeland isn't just the place where you're born. Homeland is the place that gives you the chance to become a better human being." Over time, during those months at Fort Deans, the female prisoners no longer felt like prisoners. They were young people, rediscovering what it meant to be respected, to be needed, to be connected. In a place of captivity, they had found something their homeland had stolen from them, faith in human dignity. May 15th, 1945. The atmosphere at Fort Deans was unusually tense. That morning, all 60 female prisoners were summoned to the main hall. Captain Margaret Sullivan stepped onto the platform, holding a thick folder stamped in red by the War Department. Her voice was steady and firm. "You will be repatriated to Germany within 2 weeks. We will transport you through Europe to refugee camps and from there back to your homeland. The order has been approved. This is the official decision." The room fell silent. In that moment, every whisper vanished. All eyes turned to one another. Suddenly, Ingrid Brenner stood up. Her hands clutched her diary, trembling, but her voice, though slow, was clear in English. "Captain Sullivan, please allow me to speak. Some of us do not wish to return to Germany." A wave of murmurs swept through the hall. The American soldiers exchanged stunned glances. Never before had prisoners refused freedom in order to stay. Anna Weber stepped forward, her voice hoarse with emotion. "We know this sounds strange, but Germany is no longer home. The Germany we served is not the Germany we believed in. We are afraid that if we go back, we will find only ruins and hatred." One by one, they moved to stand beside Ingrid and Anna. 14 women out of 60 spoke the truth from the depths of their hearts. They wished to remain in America. Captain Sullivan stood frozen. In all her military career, she had never faced such a moment. She looked at their young faces, streaked with tears, yet burning with determination. After the meeting, Private Morrison, the Iowa farm boy who once offered Anna a cup of tea, quietly approached Sullivan and whispered, "Ma'am, maybe it's not my place, but these girls, they're no longer the enemy. They're just people swept into a storm far bigger than themselves. Sending them back to nothing might be the wrong thing." That night, Captain Sullivan sent an urgent telegram to Washington. The message was brief. German prisoners at Fort Deans refuse repatriation. Request to remain in America. Immediate directive requested. From that moment on, the entire camp lived in suspense. No one knew how Washington would respond. But one thing was certain. Fort Deans was no longer an ordinary prison camp. It had become the center of an unprecedented question. Did prisoners of war have the right to choose to stay? News quickly leaked out. Local newspapers across Massachusetts ran the headlines. German female prisoners refuse freedom. Captives begged to stay in America. Public opinion split instantly. Some papers raged. Why indulge the enemy while American boys are still dying in the Pacific? Veterans associations denounced it, calling it a disgrace. Yet other voices emerged. Many churches and charitable groups wrote letters to Fort Deans, affirming they had seen the transformation of these women, insisting they deserved a chance to rebuild their lives. In this climate, a remarkable figure appeared, Father Heinrich Müller, a German-born priest living in Worcester, not far from the camp. He asked permission to meet with the 14 women. The conversation lasted more than 3 hours in a small room. For the first time in months, they spoke naturally in their mother tongue. Father Müller did not comfort, nor did he promise. Instead, he asked hard questions. You say Germany is no longer home, but is it not in its ruin that your homeland needs you most? You say you have found kindness in America, but what of the suffering people in Hamburg, in Berlin? Do they not also need that kindness? If everyone chooses to remain, who will return to rebuild? His words cut deep, like a blade to the heart. Ingrid lowered her head, tears streaming. She realized their wish to stay was not only about longing for freedom, it was also fear. Fear of facing what Germany had done. Anna whispered, her voice shaking, Father, it is easier to stay here. To stay means we can begin again, but to return, I don't know if I have the courage. Father Müller looked at each face in turn. You must answer this for yourselves. To stay or to return must not be an escape. It must be the right thing. You must choose responsibility or safety. When he left, silence weighed heavy in the room. The hesitant laughter of earlier days was gone. Only burdened eyes remained. From that day, the group of 14 was divided. Some began to doubt. Others grew more resolute. Each night, debates broke out. We owe our homeland a return. No, we owe ourselves the chance to live differently. Fort Deans, once peaceful, now trembled again, this time with the turmoil inside each soul. After many days of waiting, the telegram from Washington finally arrived at Fort Deans. Captain Sullivan opened the envelope, her eyes scanning the cold typewritten lines. She drew in a deep breath and gathered all 60 female prisoners in the hall. Her voice rang out, clear but heavy with weight. The War Department has made its decision. Those who wish to return to Germany will be repatriated as planned. Those who do not will be considered displaced persons, stateless migrants. You will no longer be prisoners of war, but neither will you be under the protection of the army. You must find sponsors, work, and a home here in America. The choice is yours. The room fell silent. Every eye burned with inner struggle. The decision meant that staying was no longer sheltering under the Army's care, but stepping into a new journey, hard, uncertain, yet free. Of the 14 who had asked to remain, 5 collapsed into their seats, sobbing. Trembling, they confessed they lacked the courage to face an unknown future in a foreign land. They chose repatriation, even though Germany meant only ruins and hatred. The remaining 9, led by Ingrid Brenner and Anna Weber, stood firm. Ingrid rose, her eyes red, but her voice resolute. We know this path will not be easy. But if permitted, we choose to stay. We want to build a new life, one where we can become better people. After the meeting, something unexpected happened. The local community began to step forward with offers of help. The Henderson family immediately volunteered to sponsor Ingrid. Mrs. Henderson promised her a place in their home and pledged to help her find work as a translator. She said, "This young woman has intelligence and a heart that knows remorse." I believe she deserves a chance. And Dr. Robert Hayes offered to sponsor Anna. In a letter to the committee, he wrote, "She has a natural gift for medicine. I will take responsibility for training her as a certified nurse. If America needs more healing hands, then here is one." Other families soon came forward to sponsor the remaining women. What astonished Captain Sullivan most was that only months earlier the people around Fort Deans had been wary and distrustful. Yet now they opened their arms. News spread across the press. German prisoners find new homes in America. Massachusetts families adopt former enemies. Many hailed it as a symbol of compassion in the post-war world, but for the women, it was more than headlines. It was a chance to rewrite the destiny of their own lives. June 20th, 1945. On a summer morning, Fort Deans witnessed a scene unlike any in the history of prisoners of war. Not the tense march of captives under guard, not the cold shadow of war, but a farewell overflowing with tears. 46 women stepped onto trucks bound for repatriation. They carried only small bundles, a few photographs taken with American soldiers, some letters, and small keepsakes. Outside, the guards, men who had once seen them as enemies, now shook hands with each one, embracing them tightly. Some hugs were so heavy with emotion that no words could be spoken. Captain Sullivan stepped forward, her voice solemn, yet full of feeling. "You came here as enemies, but today you leave as friends. Remember this: Americans may punish with justice, but they also forgive with compassion. I hope you carry that home with you." Eyes brimmed red, tears rolled down cheeks. From the row of those staying behind, Ingrid rose, representing the 9 women who had chosen resettlement. Her English was now fluent, her voice steady. "Captain Sullivan, when we came here, we thought we knew what America was. We thought we understood our enemy, but we were wrong. The true enemy was never the people here. The true enemy was the hatred and ignorance within our own hearts." The hall fell silent. Morrison, Chen, Hayes, the guards who had once watched over them, now wiped tears from their eyes. The trucks rumbled to life, carrying 46 women back to Europe. From the windows they waved. Those left behind waved back, tears mixing with smiles. In that moment, Fort Deans was no longer a prison. It was a bridge between past and future, between hatred and forgiveness. In her diary, Ingrid wrote, "They left and we remained. But we are the same, people who found here a simple truth. Compassion can outlast war. I will never forget this day." The June farewell of 1945 closed a brief yet turbulent chapter in the history of Fort Deans. 46 women returned to Germany while 9 remained, beginning new lives on the very soil that had once been their enemy. Ingrid Brenner, the interpreter. Sponsored by the Henderson family, Ingrid moved into a small house in suburban Worcester. With her rapidly improving English, she was introduced to a translation office under the U.S. State Department. On her first day, she froze at the sight of towering stacks of files, all belonging to European refugees. Many letters were messy, full of spelling mistakes, yet brimming with the pain of losing a homeland. Ingrid knew she had become a bridge of language for those displaced lives. In a letter to Mrs. Henderson, she wrote, "Each time I hold a file, it feels as though I'm holding my own life. I know what it means to lose everything, to cling only to fragile hope. I want to use my ability to give them back their voice." Anna Weber, the healer. Under the guidance of Dr. Robert Hayes, Anna began working at Worcester General Hospital. Her hands, once trembling from hunger and cold, now carefully placed syringes, dressed wounds, and tended to the sick. She never married. When asked why, she only smiled. I am already married to this work. I want my life to be a kind of atonement. Many patients remembered her gentle blue eyes, as though carrying within them the deep conviction that people are still worthy of love, no matter their past. Maria Gotch became a records clerk at a local company, transforming piles of chaotic files into an orderly system admired by all. Greta Hoffman applied to work as a mechanic in an auto shop, surprising everyone when her hands repaired engines faster and more neatly than many male workers. Some of the women married the very American soldiers who had once guarded them. Children of mixed American-German heritage were born, carrying within them both the memory of war and the hope of a future free of hatred. The most moving thing was this: they kept in touch with those who had returned to Germany. Letters began to pass back and forth, sometimes taking months to arrive. From Germany came stories of Berlin in ruins, of homes reduced to rubble, of hunger lurking everywhere. From America came stories of new jobs, of sponsoring families, of learning to live as free citizens. In one letter to Ingrid, a friend wrote, "In Hamburg, people look at us as traitors because we were once prisoners. But I tell them that in America, we were treated as human beings. I tell them not all Americans are enemies. And you know what? They cried. They cried because for the first time, they could believe the future still exists." Kian, those letters became an invisible thread stretching across the Atlantic, linking a dark past to a fragile new hope. 1970, 25 years after the war had ended. Ingrid Brenner Henderson, now an American citizen, was invited to speak at the United Nations headquarters in New York at a conference on post-war reconciliation. She stepped up to the podium, still holding the small leather notebook, the diary she had clutched on her first day at Fort Deans. Her voice was low but steady, filled with conviction. On May 15th, 1945, we were told that we were free, that we would return to our homeland. But we had to face the question, what is a true homeland? We learned that homeland is not only where you are born. Homeland is the place that gives you the chance to live more justly. We learned that the true enemy was not Americans or Germans. The true enemy was the hatred within the human heart, and we defeated that enemy. The entire hall rose in applause. Many delegates wept. Ingrid's speech became one of the most powerful testimonies to the strength of forgiveness and the human capacity for change. The story of the women prisoners at Fort Deans did not end in 1945. It became a living legacy of how humanity can rise above hatred. In Germany, those who returned carried with them the memory of American compassion, helping to heal the scars of war. In America, those who stayed built new lives, becoming model citizens, proof of the power of second chances. The children of American-German unions, families born across two former battle lines, became symbols of reconciliation. They were told, "You are free, you may leave." But they replied, "We want to stay," because they understood that freedom is not merely the breaking of chains. Freedom is the right to choose a new life, one lived with kindness, compassion, and honesty to oneself. From enemies to friends, from prisoners to citizens, this was the true victory, and Fort Deans will forever stand as proof that even in the deepest darkness, the light of compassion can still guide the way. If you were in their place, would you return to a homeland in ruins or stay to rewrite your fate? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel to discover more untold human stories from World War II. Kid.